Again, my name is Michelle Mitchell. I am the Attorney General for the Black Law Students Association at Georgetown University Law Center. We'd like to welcome you to a special evening put on by three special organizations here: the Black Law Students Association, the Muslim Law Students Association, and the Georgetown Law Democrats. We've been really excited about having Congressman Ellison here, who's here at this front table. He means a lot to all of our communities, and I would just like to bring up the presidents of our organizations to say a couple of words about their organizations, along with our Dean of Students, Dean Mitchell Balin.
Good evening. My name is Toya Carmichael, and on behalf of the Black Law Students Association again, I would just like to thank all of you for coming. As Michelle said, we've been excited and trying to plan this event since we met Congressman Ellison back in September. So thank you so much for agreeing to be with us this evening. Just to give you a little bit of background about the Black Law students here at Georgetown, the organization has been here on campus since the 1970s. And since then, our chapter has grown to over 200 members. Many of our alumni and current members are here today, so thank you for joining us. As part of the National Black Law Students Association and the Mid-Atlantic region, we focus on national, regional, and local initiatives. Some of our initiatives for this year include voter registration and voter protection, which we'll talk about this evening, increasing the enrollment of African American students in law school, bringing diversity awareness to the Law Center and the greater community, and of course and always community service in the DC area. So thank you so much for joining the Black Law students, and later this evening I'll tell you about some of our other upcoming events.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to see the house packed tonight, despite the crazy weather and the slippage that's been happening outside. I know some of y'all fell out there because it's crazy, but it's really good to have all of you here. And especially thank you to Congressman Ellison for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. My name is Seema Ahmad. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Muslim Law Student Association, and on behalf of my other co-president, Laura El-Sabawi, who you'll hear from a little bit later, I just want to thank you all very much for being here and tell you a little bit about MALSA. As all of you can imagine and know, the Muslim identity encompasses quite a broad range of issues, and we are very active on campus. On the religious sort of component, we have Friday prayers every week. We have meetings with our Muslim chaplain here, Imam Hendi, and many of you joined us during Ramadan, the month of fasting, for weekly iftars. There's also quite a social justice component to some of the work we do. We've had events on Guantanamo, on Israel and Palestine, and quite a number of interfaith events. For example, last year, one on the role of Jesus in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So I hope all of you continue to come out for all of our events, and if you ever want more information, you are more than welcome and more than invited to participate in our community. So welcome and thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Heather Moss, and I'm just glad I can see over the podium. That's my biggest concern with public speaking. But I'm the president of the Georgetown Law Democrats, and it's a relatively young organization. It's the Georgetown campus chapter of the National Democratic Law Students Council, which was just founded in 2005. We're a rapidly growing organization with over 200 members at our campus alone, and our members participate in a variety of activities like campaign work, voter protection, political action, and legal advocacy and community service. So it's a very exciting time to be involved in Law Democrats, and we want to invite any of you guys who aren't already on our listserv. We have sign-in sheets on your way out if you'd like to sign up. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Good evening. I'm Mitch Balin. I'm the Dean of Students here at the Law Center. It's a pleasure to see everybody. It is a pleasure to see a packed house tonight. Congressman Ellison, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you for being with us this evening. It's a privilege for the Office of the Dean of Students to be able to support this kind of event. I think one of the best things about Georgetown Law is that we have diverse student organizations who come together, they collaborate, and they produce this kind of event that we can be proud of. We benefit from it together. It creates community dialogue on issues of national importance and global importance. And so it makes my job a heck of a lot of fun to work with you all when this all comes together. So everybody have a great program this evening. Thank you.
And now we will get to some of the best parts of the program. We have a Quranic reading by Ali Al-Kandari. He is an Arabic Studies major at Georgetown, and he's going to be sharing with us, followed by a translation by Laura El-Sabawi.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. The most gracious. It is He who has taught the Quran. He has created man. He has taught him speech and intelligence. The sun and the moon follow courses exactly computed, and the stars and the trees both bow in adoration. And the firmament has He raised high, and He has set up the balance of justice, in order that you may not transgress due balance. So establish weight with justice and fall not short in the balance. It is He who has spread out the earth for His creatures. Therein is fruit and date palms producing spades, also corn with its leaves and stalk for fodder and sweet-smelling plants. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny?
Thank you for that beautiful recitation. Next on your program, you will see that we have a poem called Ever Only by Kenny Alcé. He's actually caught in the snowstorm right now, but he's trying his best to get here. The poem was actually written especially for tonight with Congressman Ellison in mind, so we will definitely make sure to bring him on when he does get here. Instead of that, we will be having Jordine Blaze, who will share a poem by Langston Hughes.
I, too, sing America. I am the darker sister, They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed, for I too am America. Thank you.
I'd now like to ask our President of the Muslim Law Students Association, Seema Ahmad, to present the introduction of our keynote speaker.
Hello again, everyone. I have the honor of introducing Congressman Ellison tonight. Congressman Ellison took office in January of 2007 as representative of the 5th Congressional District of Minnesota. Prior to that, he served in the Minnesota State House of Representatives from 2003 to 2007. A theme that we actually want to focus on here tonight is the idea of the first and only. And I want to reflect for just a minute and go beyond just recognizing Congressman Ellison as the first and only Muslim member of Congress to actually thinking about what that means and why it's important for us to reflect on that tonight. As many of you know, soon after Congressman Ellison was elected in November, he had that infamous interview with Glenn Beck, where Glenn Beck said, quote, "Prove to me that you are not working with our enemies." He said, and I know you're not. I'm not accusing you of being an enemy, but that's the way I feel, and I think a lot of Americans will feel that way. Congressman Ellison eloquently and tactfully replied that his constituents, quote, "know that I have a deep love and affection for my country. There's no one who's more patriotic than I am, and so I don't need to prove my patriotic stripes." If that wasn't enough, a whole slew of hatred erupted when Congressman Ellison announced his intention to take his oath of office on the Quran, the holy book in Islam. Dennis Prager, a conservative media pundit, wrote, quote, "Forgive me, but America should not give a hoot what Keith Ellison's favorite book is. Insofar as a member of Congress taking an oath to serve America and uphold its values is concerned, America is interested in only one book, the Bible. If you are incapable of taking the oath on that book, don't serve in Congress." And just to underscore that this is not the view of just one single person, there were hundreds of hate calls and emails following this. Even a member of Congress, Representative Virgil Goode, said the decision to use the Quran is a threat to the, quote, "values and beliefs traditional to the United States of America." He also wrote, quote, "If American citizens don't wake up and adopt the Virgil Goode position on immigration, there will likely be many more Muslims elected to office and demanding the use of the Quran." Someone forgot to point out to Representative Goode that Congressman Ellison is not an immigrant, as a side note. All of this is to say that the struggles facing those of us who aspire to be the first are very real. But Congressman Ellison has taken his experience and used it to advocate on behalf of all Americans that are struggling. He cares about working families, the environment, health care, and repairing the criminal justice system, among so many other issues. Last semester, I was working on the Hill, and I was very struck by hearing Congressman Ellison at the GINA 6 hearings. He said, aside from the issue of civil rights decisions and hate crime stuff, what about black youth and Latino youth in the criminal justice system and the over-incarceration of black people? We live in a country that incarcerates more than 2 million people. Don't we have a system that is essentially using the criminal justice system to do what the Jim Crow system did in the past? Isn't it just an extension? That's the kind of courage that Congressman Ellison embodies. We thank him for that and thank him for being here today.
Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be to everybody in the room tonight. Seema, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And also, the Quranic recitation was beautiful. And I want to thank you for that wonderful recitation. All praises due to Allah. And also, the poem is one that's one of my favorites. I think that we should look back on those Black Renaissance poets and draw upon what they have to teach us on a regular basis. You know, a great law professor said to me one time that, you know, Keith, if you want to be remembered for what you said, you want people to remember what you said, never say more than 3 things. Never say more than 3. Saying 2 things is better than saying 3 things, and saying 1 thing is best of all. So I got 1 thing to tell you. Everything I say after this 1 thing is an elaboration on that 1 thing. Just 1 thing. Time is now. Say it with me. The time is now. What time? Time to reclaim our country. Time to reclaim our world. Time to set this world on a course that puts the common good up front and center. The time is now to do those things. We have been at a very low ebb for a long time in America. And we are at the very point where we can have a long drive upward, forward of progress. But progress doesn't happen by accident. Progress doesn't happen just by the forward march of time, as Martin Luther King teaches us and taught us. Progress doesn't happen just because time moves forward. Progress happens because people work hard to make it happen. Because you and I know that the God above will not change our condition until we work to change our own condition. Is that right? The fact of the matter is, leadership is what's needed at this time, but the time is now, the time is right, the conditions are good to take what we've seen over the last several years and turn it into a miraculous, beautiful world that King called the beloved community. The time is now to grab the beloved community. Right now. I'm not just talking about in America, I'm talking about the worldwide. I'm talking about economically, militarily, I'm talking about socially, religiously, the interfaith dialogue. Everything is ripe for change because we have been seasoned, we have been conditioned, and we have been shown in dramatic fashion the politics of fear, division. We've seen the politics of neglect. We've seen the politics of selfishness, avariciousness, and greed. We've seen all these politics, and what has it got us? Well, it got us a war where nearly 4,000 American soldiers have been killed, and estimates as high as 600,000 Iraqis killed, and more conservative estimates of nearly 150,000 killed Iraqis. That means that there's no Iraqi family that does not know death. No Iraqi family does not know destruction. No Iraqi family does not know what it means to hear a child cry and you cannot feed that child. Every Iraqi family knows that pain. We don't know it because it's a long way away, but it's happening nonetheless, and the world knows it. Over the last 8 years, we've seen an economy which went from a $288 billion surplus to one of the largest deficits this country has ever seen. And the deficit is so bad that it's crowding out domestic spending. And it's so difficult that the Fed is trying to stimulate the economy by cutting interest rates. And we're in danger of having the interest rates go so low that if inflation goes above the interest rate, banks won't loan because they'll lose money to do it. What kind of economic crisis will that cause? I'm painting a negative picture. You're like, gee, that doesn't sound so hot. But let me just tell you, after the hardship comes the ease. We're at a point where we really can have an upward surge because people are turning to each other. Let me just tell you something that happened in my campaign. And Seema told you a few things that some of these silly people said. But despite all the things that they threw at me, we won anyway, and it wasn't close. I'm telling you that I'm telling you that in one of the whitest states in the union, Minnesota, that my opponent sent out 110,000 pieces of literature accusing me of being a terrorist. And the people said, garbage, we don't believe it. They've been trying to attack Barack Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. Ooh. You would think Hussein meant very scary guy, right? Really, it means handsome. That's what it means. How scary is that? You know. And yet they can't, and yet he just keeps on rolling. And I respect y'all who are here for other candidates. I'm not here to pump for a candidate, but I can tell you that right here, right now, on the day of the Potomac primaries, it's not looking good for the people who tried to whip up hatred against Barack Obama because he has Muslim heritage. Now, before you think that this is some great credit to Barack Obama, he does deserve credit. Of course, all praise is due to God. But before you think that it's his credit, it's actually the people's credit. Because the people who have to go into a ballot box and say, I choose this guy, that's really deep, isn't it? Think about an 80-year-old Jewish woman in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, who may be a Holocaust survivor or may be close to one, saying, you know what, I heard all that mess they said about Keith Ellison. I'm voting for him anyway. Think about that. That's not my credit. That's her credit. That's her looking past hate, looking past enmity and strife and people trying to divide her from her fellow human beings. Think about that. There's something there. The people who survive on dividing humanity are losing. And you and I are winning. And all we need is a little leadership. That's all we need. So I came to the most important people in Washington, D.C., law students. I mean that so sincerely. I really don't miss opportunities to talk to students. I was at South High this morning. That's a high school in Minneapolis. Because you all are not little kids. You're grown men and women, but you're in general young men and women. And you're at that point in your life where you can choose to only pursue individual pecuniary interests. You know, get your loot on, get your money on. Or you can say, we're going to pick up a new mantle. We're going to put humanity first. We're going to take division and we're going to attack it head on, and we're going to try to bring people together as opposed to send them apart. And we're going to try to pursue this unity and human solidarity because we believe that the problems facing the world today are very serious, and we cannot afford to be fighting each other as we're fighting everything from the crumbling infrastructure in America to loss of civil and human rights in America to loss of U.S. Image abroad because of our abandonment of the rule of law and due process. We cannot afford to fix global climate change if we are at each other's throats. We have got to say something to ourselves similar to, oh, humanity, we created you from a single pair and made you into nations and tribes so that you would know each other and not hate each other. This is Quran. That's the Quran right there. For my Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters here, that's part of what our book says. And I just want you to know that there's nothing about Islam that you would find scary if you understood it. I want you to know that. I want you to know that even though Dennis Prager and Virgil Good and Glenn Beck and all these people spend a whole lot of time trying to make you think that your fellow Americans who happen to be Muslim are like bad folks, they're really not. And you have the courage to come together today with the Black Law Student Association, the Muslim Law Student Association, and the Democratic Law Student Association. All I say is thank God for it. It's the kind of unity that we need. It's the kind of unity that we need. The time is now for a new politics. The time is now for a new politics of generosity, a new politics based on the idea of inclusion. Let me just say this to you as I move into something. I want to grab a story from the Bible. Since Dennis Prager thinks I need to be looking at the Bible, I use a story from the Bible. And as a matter of fact, you should know that the Muslims refer to the Bible as the Injil, the Gospel of Jesus. And it's part of what we believe is Holy Scripture. And so you should know that. I want you to know that. I desperately want my Christian brothers and sisters to know that we honor your tradition. Let me just say, there's a story in which Jesus is teaching the multitudes, 5,000 people, all. He's teaching the multitudes, and you know he's probably really pitching it out there because they didn't have any amplification in those days. And, you know, the 5,000 didn't include the women because the Bible writers didn't include our sisters. They just said 5,000, so probably it was 10,000 people. So he's pitching a message out there, and you know it's a message of love, it's a message of inclusion, it's a message of trying to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and give drink to the thirsty, and visit those who are in prison. And you know it's a message along those lines. And it got to be around dinner time, and Jesus leaned over to his crew, and he says, hey, it's about dinner time, guys. What are we going to do? Because we got to feed the people. And they say, hey, man, there's only a couple of fish and some bread, and we pretty much divvied it up between us, you know. He said, they got to go home because we ain't got no food for them, man. It's just, hey, whatever. And he says, give me the food. And he starts handing it out. And the Bible story goes that not only was there enough, there was more than enough. And at the end, they had to actually go pick up what was left. Is that right? Who can tell me? Who knows the Bible well enough to tell me whether I'm right or wrong? Okay, see, I got a witness. Amen, sister. So the point is, so what is the point of the story? Is it just a flat out miracle? Just God just said, be more food, and there was more. Maybe. Or maybe did people say, you know, there's just not that much food, so I'm going to go home to the village and bring back some food to share with other people. Did that happen? I don't know. Or maybe what was perceived as scarcity was actually abundance. Or maybe what people said is, look, if we hoard this and keep it to ourselves, there ain't enough for all of them. So there's not enough. But there was enough. There was enough. And today there is enough. There's enough for the native-born Americans and the new Americans. We don't have to divide each other. There's enough for the blacks and the Latinos, the Asians, the whites. There's enough. There's enough for the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, the Buddhists. There's enough. There's enough for us all. There's enough. The politics of generosity are the politics of saying that there is enough. There's enough money in America, the richest country in the world, the richest country in the history of the world, to have health care for every single American person. We don't have to have 50 million people without. We just don't have to have it. It is a political decision, and we are making it every day. And if we change our mind, it could be different. And the time is now to make it different. I'm proud to say that there's a whole movement sweeping across America where these Muslims are setting up these clinics all over the place. They got one in L.A. called the Ummah Clinic. Say Ummah Clinic. I want you to go to, and let me tell you where the Ummah Clinic is. It's not out in Beverly Hills somewhere. Ummah Clinic is in the stomped down hood. It's right there on Alameda or something like that. Maybe some of y'all know the right street. It's Florence. There it is. It's in one of the toughest, it's in one of the neighborhoods that got burnt down during the riots and has been neglected ever since. So these group of folks said, you know what, we're doctors and medical people, we're going to do it. And they said, you know what, this can't be for the Muslims. We want everybody who's sick to come here. And we want other folks who are not Muslim to help us raise money and make the place run. Ummah means community, right? And so other folks got inspired, and there's these clinics going on all over the world. People responding to human need. I'm proud of that. I'm so proud of that. I think it's so good that we're doing those things. There's enough. There's enough. There is enough if we don't have people making $100 million a year who run healthcare companies. Bill McGuire makes $100 million every year. If he made $90 million, it'd be a bad year. It's ridiculous, and he ought to be ashamed. And all of us ought to say that there's something wrong with an economy that allows somebody to have so much and have so many to have so little. It's wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in markets, but I believe markets should exist in a symbiotic, balanced relationship with the public sector. They should complement each other. One should not subsume the other. There's enough. There's enough for us to have a fair immigration policy in America. And only people who believe and subscribe to the politics of fear say that there's not enough. This whole argument about immigration is all about the politics of fear, all about who they're going to throw off the island. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. 12 million people here, and we want to say, send them all home. Let's build a big fence. Well, we create a trade policy, which in the land of the tortilla, Mexico, is now importing corn because of our trade policy, NAFTA. Well, let me tell you, Mexico is warm and a nice place, and why would you want to leave the place where you speak the language and your family is unless you absolutely had to? That's why they're here. What if we cut a deal that actually was a politics based on generosity and inclusion of people? A trade policy that said, we want trade, but we want fair trade. We don't want to wipe out your industries, and we don't want you to wipe out ours. And we're going to do justice by the people who are here. We're going to give them a path towards citizenship, and that's what we need to do. This is a different way of looking at it. It's a different way of looking at it. It's a different way. It's saying, you know what? Company has come over. We didn't expect them to come. We're going to put some more water in the gumbo, right? We're going to put a little bit more water in the stew. I don't know how you make more hummus, but whatever. But that's what we're going to do. So my point is, it is a politics of generosity. I had a trip recently to Norway. And y'all are thinking, Norway? What'd you go to Norway for? Why don't you go to Iraq or Pakistan, or where it's really going down? Go to the West Bank, man. Go where the action is. I go there too. But what I'm telling you is, let me tell you about Norway. Norway is a country that actually has a culture of peace. Back in 1905, they established the Nobel Prize to place value on peacemaking. To place value on peacemaking. And I can tell you, when I was in Norway and I stood at that stadium at the University of Oslo where Martin Luther King in 1964 received that award and gave his speech, I was misty-eyed and fighting back tears. I had to walk away because I was going to be embarrassed, you know. But I just felt like, wow, this is where he did that. This is where he stood. And this is where a nation, when it was really in the balance, y'all don't know 64. I was only about 3-4 months old by then. But I can tell you, 64 was a time like now. 64 was a time like now. Let me tell you about 1963 for a moment. In June of 1963, Medgar Evers on June 11th was shot down because he was organizing black voters in Mississippi. On the same night, President Kennedy stood before the nation and said, we tell the world that we're the land of the free and the home of the brave, except for the Negro. We tell the world we have no second-class citizenship, except for the Negro. We tell the world that opportunity in America's a land of opportunity, except for the Negro. This is a moral problem, and he went on. The president said that. Can you imagine this president speaking to social justice? It's inconceivable that he would care about anyone other than rich people. So anyway, that's why he got up there in 1980 and he said, hey, you know what? I'm glad to be here at this $800 a plate dinner. Some people call you the elite. I call you my base. He pretty much said it all. And if you didn't believe him, when Katrina hit, his mother got up there and said, well, you know, I think that these people are probably doing quite well, better than they're doing back there in the 8th Ward or wherever they come from. These are people in the Astrodome, y'all, starving. People who have been escaped, a massive hurricane that's wiped out everything that they have. Already poor. Now you got nothing. And that's what she had to say. They're probably doing pretty good now, better than they were doing before. They should be happy. This is the kind of people who lead our country. The time is now for you to step forward and make a change. The time is now for you to figure out how to bring economic justice to America, to have an economy where the average person can do well, where the average immigrant doesn't have to fear, where a sister can wear a hijab and doesn't have to worry about what idiot is going to try to pull it off because he thinks that that's the way to stand up for Christianity. Christ would never do anything like that. Time is now. It's a good time to reach out to your brother and sister and build solidarity. It's a good time for the interfaith dialogue. Very good time for that. You know, during Ramadan, 2 stories on Ramadan. You know, I'm fasting all day during Ramadan, and so this young fellow who's Lutheran, who says, hey, you know, Keith, just because I'm Lutheran doesn't mean I can't fast during Ramadan, and in solidarity with you, my brother, I'm going to fast 1 full day during Ramadan. There he is right there. His name is Carl. Carl, put your hand up. But another Ramadan story, which speaks to the interfaith dialogue, is that during Ramadan, my masjid in Minneapolis, Masjid An-Nur, we celebrate, you know, Ramadan. We had, you know, our iftar dinner, you know, we do Maghrib, then we go do, we have dinner and we break bread and break our fast. And this year, Yom Kippur actually coincided with Ramadan. And so our imam went to the local rabbi of the largest temple in the city of Minneapolis and invited the people of Temple Israel to break fast with us. So we did our prayer, and then after that, they had their break fast ceremony, and they watched us, and they were like, well, why are them guys standing up and bending over and all that stuff that they do? And then we asked them why they're doing what they're doing, and we all talked about that. And then we went downstairs, and the people who RSVP'd said that they were coming. We only had about 120-some people tell us that they were coming, but 160 showed up. We had a problem, but there was enough because we shared. Because the imam and the rabbi said, we don't have enough chairs for everybody, but we're going to be sitting on the floor right here, and anyone who doesn't have a seat is free to join us. And we did. And I'm telling you that, you know, that day, you know, you had people, Muslim folks who were, you know, the Muslim community is all colors, all cultures, all faiths, right? All colors and, you know, different cultures. And then you had this particular Jewish population, you know, all of them were of European ancestry, right? And then, of course, you had some Christians who heard the Muslims and the Christians were getting together, so they wanted to see this. So we had many of them show up. So we were all in this basement of the masjid. We were all breaking fast. We were all talking, and we were going to end up at 9. We ended up till 10:30 because people just would not stop talking. And numbers were exchanged and friendships were made. This is the time to do that kind of thing. Because there are people who want you to believe that you can strengthen your identity within your faith by railing against people of another faith. They're not telling you that your faith is based on your relationship with the divine and you demonstrate that faith by your service to your fellow man and woman. They say your faith is proven by how much destruction and pain you can bring on people who are different from you. And let me tell you, the people doing it are young people. Yigal Amir, young Jewish man, killed Yitzhak Rabin because he was trying to work out a peace agreement with the Palestinians. The 7/7 bombers, the people who, young Muslim guys, blew up these subways in London, some of them not even 20 years old. And then, of course, Eric Rudolph, who's killing people at women's health centers, young guy. But all these young men who did these terrible things were nursed by older people, feeding them hate, feeding them division, telling them, hey, look, hey, homie, you want to stand up for your group? Put your work in. What does that sound like? Gang stuff, doesn't it? That sounds like some street thug stuff. And guess what? It is. It is. It absolutely is. Because all they're trying to do is strengthen their identity vis-a-vis hating someone else, when no faith among the three is about hating anyone else. It might be about hating starving people. All three of them are about that. It might be about hating wickedness and injustice, but it's not about hating human beings. The time is now for you to say, let the interfaith dialogue begin. Let the interfaith dialogue begin. Let economic justice begin. Let health care for all begin. Let the health of our planet begin. I want you all to do a few things. One is I want you to begin or continue the interfaith dialogue right here at Georgetown University Law Center. I love that point about having all three faiths talk about how they share Jesus. I want to see you guys continue your work in the community. In the richest country in the world, there are 40 million people in poverty. The ranks of the poor have increased by 1 million every single year of the Bush administration. Hunger increases in America. At Second Harvest Food Shelf in Minnesota, they can tell you quite clearly that they cannot keep food on the shelves, donated food on the shelves, for all of the need that's out there. And don't think it's just the inner city, it's people around the world too. I also want you all to really begin to think about yourself as a world citizen. We have an advantage. Many of us, actually have immigrated here, or our parents did, so we're already in a position where we can think about ourselves that way. I'm sitting next to one person from Kashmir, somebody else from Haiti. So we're already, I got a head start, right? But even those of us who may be 14 generations of Americans like me, that's what makes Virgil Good so funny. They actually brought one of my ancestors who I can actually trace from the Gold Coast, which is now Togo, in 1742. We know this because they were brought into New Orleans, up to Natchitoches, Louisiana, and stayed there up till this day. So we know that. They didn't get shifted around a lot. So we were able to keep that record. All praises due to Allah. So, but even though those of us who are deep on this soil, we need to figure out how to become greater world citizens. We have to look at countries like Norway and know that peace is possible. We have to reject people who say that the world is a dangerous, scary place, and we got to get a lot of bombs and guns so we can protect ourselves from those people who are out there to get us. I'm telling you, that's politics of fear. John F. Kennedy said, never negotiate in fear, but never fear to negotiate. What is this idea that we reward people with negotiation after they comply with our demands? Have you heard of this odd way of negotiating? Let me tell you, in court, you will never have to negotiate with the person who is on your team. You negotiate with the people on the other side. That's what negotiation is. And yet we say to the world community, countries we have adverse interests to, that you do what we say, then we'll talk. That's not working. And how would we ever think that it would? Unless we believe that people have no spine and don't want to stand up for themselves and don't demand any basic human respect. I'm telling you that, yes, I voted against sanctions against Iran. I will do it again until somebody proves to me that they just might work. I voted against sanctions for Iran because then after I did it, then it came out that the national intelligence estimate said that they weren't weaponizing since 2003. And I said, I was the one who was right. Not only me, others were too. But my point is, whenever you listen to this scare hype, we end up in stuff like Iraq. You can't do it. You make them prove it. So I want to thank you all for doing what you're doing. I want to ask you to continue to do the community service that you're doing. Never get so high and mighty that you cannot cut up some onions so a poor person can eat. Take yourself down to the central kitchen. You're not too good for that. Some of y'all actually probably grew up on the food that places like Central Kitchen provides. It's important for us to know, particularly those of us who are native born in America for generations, that many of our Pakistani and Palestinian and other brothers and sisters who we see today, we might see them wear sharp suits today and driving big cars, but if you were to go back to the neighborhoods that they came from, they're as bad, if not worse, than the ones you come from in Chicago and Detroit. You should know that. That's why they came here. The rich people of those countries didn't have to leave. They were cared for. And the poor people, of course, couldn't. Please be good to each other. Be a world citizen. Care about poverty. Use your law degree for something good. I promise to stick with you and to work with you to the degree that I'm able. And I also want to close on this note, and that is this. That if there's one thing that I learned about Congress over the last year, it is that the big dogs don't have it all figured out. that there is room for an energetic, well-directed group of people to do what's right. That if we are persistent as the people who want to amass fortunes and build up weapons and start wars, if we're persistent as them, we can change this thing all around, and the time is now to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that enlightening, impassioned call to action. We'd like to open it up for a couple of questions. We have a microphone right here, and just feel free to ask whatever questions you have.
Sounds good. All right, no questions. All right. So I get to talk for another hour and a half. All right. So does anybody have anything they want to know or anything they want to say?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I just had a general question for you. As an attorney who works maybe 60, 65 hours a week, I was wondering what general pointers can you give for people to become active in the community kind of outlets and opportunities to look for people who maybe don't have a whole lot of time during their week or the ability to actually go out and find opportunities of their own?
Well, let me just tell you, I started my legal career out at a big law firm. By Washington standards, it might not be that big, but there are 120 lawyers. I was working on the 42nd floor. When I walked in my first day, that my assistant called me Mr. Ellison, and she told me to call her Mary, and I was 25 and she was 53. I said, ma'am, I cannot do that. We can't. And so that's the so I was definitely in the shoes you're sitting in. I was in litigation, and they had us hopping night and day. What I did is I began to take cases, something called legal advice clinics. I'm sure they have a comparable group here in D.C., some sort of pro bono legal clinic. I would also, and so just start doing some cases, One thing, I tell you, something occurred to me. I used to do the side of real estate after it had gone bad, right? So I used to have to sue out the leases and then kick out the tenants in commercial areas. So that meant I was throwing businesses out on what we call unlawful detainer in Minnesota. So, but when I went there, I used to see all these poor folks. And there were these other folks who were doing a little bit better, who were their landlords. And they'd be doing all their business, and we'd be doing all our commercial stuff, all pretty much in the same room. But they'd always call us up first, right? So one day I just stayed behind, and I started doing some tenant cases. And before you know it, I really started enjoying it, and it made the other part of the work I was doing more enjoyable. Because basically all you're doing if you're working in a big firm is helping this rich person take money from that rich person. That's all you're doing. I mean, basically. I mean, and now that doesn't make it bad. That doesn't make it bad. Earning a living is good. Everybody has a right to a lawyer. Everybody has a right to have their case heard. But what I'm saying is that there's things you can do. Now, also, you could work outside your faith community. I don't want to presume what that is, but, get together, do a legal clinic at your mosque, synagogue, church, Saturday morning, get a few people like yourself and say, look, at 8 a.m., we're going to be open for business. You can ask us whatever you want. You do that from 8 to 12 every weekend, and you're doing a good service, right? All right. What do you think of that? All right. Anybody else? Yep. Wow. Good to see you. How you doing? Whenever you're asked to list accomplishments, there are big accomplishments, and they always sound fuzzy. And then there are smaller accomplishments, and they're always specific, but they seem small. I would have to say that what I think is probably my biggest accomplishment in the last year is to prove through a personal example that the Muslim community in America is not scary and out to harm America. There's a young man named Andre Carson running for Congress right now. He's African American. He's also Muslim. And before the 110th Congress is even over, there'll probably be a second Muslim in Congress. And and he's like, man, you know, because you didn't act up and you didn't falter and you didn't blink and you weren't scared and you had some faith, it's easier for me. And I said, all praises due to God for that. So, you know, we passed, for the first time ever, you know, we pass resolutions honoring Christmas all the time, honoring Jewish holidays all the time, honoring other holidays. Never before in the history of the Congress did they pass a resolution recognizing and honoring Ramadan, but they did this year for the first time ever. Now, I can list off bills that I've introduced. I can tell you how a lot of stuff that I did. I mean, I have a really long list of stuff that we did. But to try to break down barriers and diminish fear, I think is probably the most important thing. I think we stood up and I was the first person to introduce a bill on the anti-predatory lending bill, the first one. And I was the first one to introduce a bill to ban universal default because on these credit cards, you know what universal default is? You know what it is. You got 2 credit cards. You're late on one. You understand why the interest rate might go up on the one you were late on, don't you? But they're going, universal default means it goes up on all your credit cards, even the ones you weren't late on, because now they say that you're a greater credit risk. Is that fair? I don't think it is. I introduced a bill to ban that practice. I also introduced a bill to have same-day election voting, you know, election day voting in every state in the union, in every federal election. We had a great hearing on it, and, you know, I believe that bill has a lot of legs. I'm proud of that effort. I could go on and on, but the main thing is that try to break down some barriers, you know. Try to speak up for a progressive voice that puts the common good first, as opposed to the public interest, the private gain first. You understand the difference? Public interest versus the private gain, individual gain. Congress needs to be a place where the average working person can have a voice, and we got to have that. I was helping lead the charge to extend temporary protective status for Liberians, and we were able to extend their temporary status. They now have until March 09 to be here. We need to turn that into permanent status. You know, when I got elected, there's some, my predecessor would get elected with 71% of the vote. I got elected with only 56% of the vote. Now, my opponents got 21%, so I beat them by a lot. But we still didn't get what we think we were supposed to get. Why? Because there's a lot of people thinking, I don't know about this guy. Every day people come up and say, you know what? I thought you were just going to be yapping and declaring the capitalist machine, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, you actually are a serious person in Congress trying to do a good work, a good way. So thank you. I'm going to vote for you next time. That makes me feel good. I say thank God for that. So anyway. Yes, sir?
I think there's a common perception among many people in America that Congress is full of, leaders who are interested only in the next pork barrel project and getting reelected. You know, and we have this cynical view of Congress. And so it's, I think, a stark contrast to that to see you, someone who is apparently very interested in social justice and very principled, you know, in trying to get things done. And I was wondering if you could comment on, looking back at your first year in Congress, what do you see as the culture within this institution? Is it actually full of very cynical individuals? How many people are there who do seem very inspired and willing to lead and dedicate themselves to a very positive, social justice type of cause?
Well, let me just say that, that's an excellent question. I'm glad you mentioned it. That's one of the reasons why I made my final comment about feeling that, Congress really is, it's much more fluid and open than I thought it was going to be. The Progressive Caucus has 70 members in it. These are people who, by basis on nothing other than their beliefs, say that we need a fair economy, we need peace, we need environmental sustainability, we need civil rights. There's a lot. But, here's the thing is, the people who want to maintain this super war economy that we have in America, they want you to believe that it's nothing but a bunch of fat cats up there washing each other's hands, right? Because if you believe that, then you, as an idealistic person, are going to be what? Turned off, right? And if you're turned off, then you're on the sideline politically. And if you're on the sideline politically, they just run the table. You see what I'm saying? Your cynicism is their friend. One of the biggest things that I'm fighting now is people saying, you know, Keith, we voted for you, you know, and we thought the war was going to end, and it didn't. And so now I'm not voting again. I'm like, that is fundamentally illogical. But sometimes it's not that you're doing the wrong thing, it's just that you're not sticking with the right thing long enough. So you got to stick with the right thing. Don't be cynical. Good question. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Please use the microphone so we can have you on the record.
First rule of evidence, the record. The record doesn't record hand gestures, none of that stuff. All right.
Congressman Ellison, first I just want to say thank you so much for your brave and common sense stance on immigration.
Thank you, ma'am.
You have an advocate for life right here based on that. My question is related to that. Say you're put in charge of the whole thing. What is the path to citizenship? What do you think it should be?
Well, I think that the path to citizenship we have to do it simultaneously with trade issues, though. You can't talk trade without talking immigration. One drives the other. So we can't continue these NAFTA-like models of the Clinton administration. So that's one thing. But what I think is that what I would do is I'd say, look, we have a country. It has rules to immigrate. The rules are not fair and they're broken. Let's get some rules that promote family reunification, that allow young people to go to college until they get their documents straight. Let's say that if you are here without your proper documentation, then you will have to pay some sort of a fine because there are rules and you're supposed to abide by them. But then you apply and get in line and get your documentation in order.
Great.
You
Thank
bet.
You.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman Ellison. I'd also like to recognize Dean Everett Bellamy, who is in the building. I think tonight has been a night that I think we will all remember for different reasons. Some of the things that you said, Congressman Ellison, they are losing, we are winning, and that we're at a time where we can really put humanity first. I feel like we have a lot of activists in the room and a lot of people who are passionate about trade issues, about immigration issues, about human rights, and I think that this is the start of something that can build and grow and change into that community that you were speaking of. I have great news for everyone. We have our poet, our resident poet here at Georgetown, Kenny, who fought through the storm and wind and rain to be here. A couple of weeks ago at a BALSA meeting, we kind of put out the call to all poets and said, you know, does anyone have anything special? Does anyone have anything that they can contribute to the night? And I heard Kenny present a poem at our Kwanzaa celebration, which we do annually, and it was amazing. I think Kenny really has a gift with words and is really able to capture everything that's kind of out there in the air that we're feeling about the past, about the present, and about the future. And so I would like to bring him on right now to share what he has created for tonight and for Congressman Ellison.
This kind of speaks, Congressman Ellison, to your last point, which is your greatest achievement. Everybody do me a favor. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. And imagine him. Imagine him. And he sits. And a million pairs of eyes bore into his soul like friendly daggers, like smiling hollow tips. A congenial encounter. like that of Megan Williams, and similarly, ain't no one really saying zilch. But I'll say it. No. I refuse to succumb to the tidal wave that is the expectancy of your prefabricated beliefs. In your prepackaged, just add red Kool-Aid understanding of what makes me, me. I realize that you have limited experience dealing with the king of the Nile. Well, my condolences. But please believe that I won't hesitate to check yourself before you wreck yourself in the moment's glance and teach you that just because I'm your first does not mean I'm not your synopsis. I don't encompass every characteristic of the square box in which your instructions say I should fit. No, I will not sing and dance. No, I will not put on any bright hooker red colored lipstick and pose with this watermelon in my hand. No, I will not subserviently sit in the shadows until you're ready to click the remote at me to turn me on. I refuse to be your personal schizophrenic BET. 50% 50 cents and the other half Farrakhan. My life is not that one episode where Zach Morris and the gang learn about my culture. And then for the rest of the season, I sit and stay in my role as an extra, never to be heard from again. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, though they'd be like, whoa, calm down, Kenny, you spitting some venom. It's not that serious, yo. Both sides of the fence get in that prevent defense and try to squeeze me in the middle. But they haven't been privy like I have to the consequences of changing my consonants even just a little. As it already stands, it's hard enough for one of us to socioeconomically advance, but then to also try to overcome force or prejudice that I helped plan? No thanks. We still live in a society that considers gentrification to be an acceptable substitute for desegregation. We still live in a society with a segment of the population that considers it an abomination that this might soon become Obama's nation. We still live in a society that is threatened by and so threatens my existence to go poof. You need some proof? Where somewhere in the middle of the Encyclopedia Blacktanica, between Thug and Tom, someone's trying to erase the truth. The pressure to conform has burst the pipes of the norm, and every time, I die a little inside. A victim of stereotypes, a crime legally unrecognized. Soul murder, the assault to the self. This identity crisis just can't be good for my health. Man, I just don't think I can go on. I don't fit in. This is affecting my kin, and I just want to go home. But then they place the elixir on my tongue. And I recognize that underneath the surface of my circumstance, I remember that my purpose is for the Lord's service. And if I really believe that I've been placed here by divine hands, then my experience isn't worthless. So today, I am the love, the peace, and the hair grease. The trailblazer that opened up the access to each of the 7 seas. The pioneer that endured all the challenges to leave a legacy that will stand the test of time. And every step I take leaves a footprint embedded in the minds of those that come behind. And I'm never alone, cuz. I'm never alone, cuz. And I'm never alone, cuz I will represent. The daddies, the mamas, the ladies, the drama, the youngins, the chillins, the melons, the chickens, the hustlers, the pimps, the monkeys, the chimps, the students, the scholars, the artists, the ballers. All us, linked together as a beautiful pyramid on display to those who will record us. For truer words were never spoken by a Republican Dan. We stand on the shoulders of those that stood before us. So through the struggle, I will stay on my military press, getting mine forever ready. Because even if I'm somewhere and I ever happen to be the first, like Congressman Ellison, I will need to make it my business not to be the ever only.
And now, while we still have all of this passion in the room, I would like to call Heather Moss to the stage to quickly give you a call to action and some things that you can do to get involved. And then we will close the program.
Thank you all for staying through the entire program. It's been a very special evening. And I am well aware that we are the final people to stand between you and dessert. So we'll keep it short. But as Congressman Ellison said, the time is now. And the first thing that I did this morning after leaving my apartment was I voted. And I hope that all of you who live in the area did so as well. And I think it's quite fitting that Congressman Ellison is speaking on our local election day because he is quite well aware of the importance of voting. As he mentioned during his speech, or at least during the question and answer period, he's introduced vital federal legislation to help open up the voting booths to all Americans, including same-day registration and the much-needed felon voting rights laws. He's also been pivotal in exposing this Justice Department's unprecedented manipulation of the most important piece of civil rights legislation ever passed in this country, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which this Justice Department has manipulated for partisan gain. Thanks to our new Democratic majority in Congress, we have a chance to fortify our nation's protections for all voters, and it's time for all of you to get involved. The Democratic National Committee has launched a year-round 50-state effort to promote and protect every citizen's right to vote, regardless if they're old or young, black or white, Muslim or Christian, Republican or Democrat. This has been an exciting and historic election already to date. We've had unprecedented numbers of people participating in this primary, but we need to not take any votes for granted. We must be vigilant in making sure that local jurisdictions provide sufficient resources to prevent backups and confusions at the polls, and we need to make sure that no one is turned away without at least voting a provisional ballot. And this is the time, it's the time now. How can you get involved? We have some information on the table as you come in or leave. You may have seen the table out there, and we have voter registration information. We also have information on how to get involved with the National Lawyers Committee, which is the Democratic Party's network of lawyers to help protect voting rights at the polls. Their website is www.dnc.org/NLC. Once again, that's www.dnc.org/NLC. And there's other information about how to get involved with the Law Democrats organization. Like I said before, there's a listserv that you can sign up for. And we also have information on D.C. voting rights. A lot of people don't know that it wasn't until very long ago that the residents of D.C. were able to vote for the presidential elections for the first time. And we still don't get a full say in Congress. So there's also information about that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jared Boyd, and I serve as National Attorney General for the National Black Law Students Association. I want to thank Georgetown, Balsa, the Muslim Law Students Association, the Law Dems for inviting me to this wonderful event. To Congressman Ellison, thank you for your inspirational words. I live in Virginia, so Virgil Good is actually my congressperson, so I apologize for that. Tomorrow, the National Black Law Students Association will converge upon Capitol Hill to let our voices be heard and to lobby for people who haven't had the same opportunities as we have as law students. One of the bills that we will be lobbying for is the Gulf Coast Recovery Act. It is a travesty that in New Orleans there are 30,000 people who continue to live in mobile homes and over 15,000 people who are homeless. This is not because these people were destitute to begin with. This is because there is a vital shortage of affordable housing, and the only thing that is preventing the government from taking action on this is pure politics. So we're hoping that you can come join us and let your voice be heard and advocate for people in New Orleans who are unable to be here and let their voices be heard. We'll also be taking up the issue of diversity in the legal profession. The American Bar Association has recently passed a new rule that deals with the way law schools are accredited that has the potential to have an adverse impact on the number of minorities in law school. And we're going to call for increased oversight for the Department of Education to ensure that people who look like us are continued to come to places like this. So if you have any questions, we'll be in Longworth, the Longworth cafeteria tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you don't have any information, we'll fill you in on the issues and send you to the offices of congresspeople to let them know about these issues and let them know that we're interested in these issues. So if you have any questions, please see me after the program is concluded. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for coming. We just want to thank a few people, facilities, and AV. Just so you know, if you have friends or others who couldn't be here or you came in late, the program will be webcast tomorrow if you go to Georgetown Law Center's main page under News and Events. On behalf of the Black Law Students Association, the Muslim Law Students Association, and the Georgetown Law Democrats, we want to thank Congressman Ellison and present you with the token of our appreciation. Do you guys want to know what it is? We have a Georgetown Law Democrats t-shirt, a BASA t-shirt.
I can't put them all on, you know.
And also a nice Georgetown Law cube, and it's engraved on the other side. It says, "A dinner with Congressman Keith Ellison, February 12, 2008. And has the program and a couple of photos in the inside. So if you go lobby tomorrow and you go in his office, make sure you look for this.
And I am in Longworth, 1130 Longworth, so I expect to see some of you guys.
And before you leave, please join us. We have dessert, coffee and tea, and cappuccino and cake in the back. Thank you so much.